uh, gosh, now we've got to go to 3 screens to see everybody. And some of you have turned your cameras off. You don't want me seeing whether you're sleeping or not. But just so you know, I do circulate through and keep an eye on everybody because this goes on your permanent record. Especially keeping an eye on John. John Everett said he can't do long Zoom meetings, so I'm going to keep an eye on him, especially today. So hope you behave yourself, John. Okay, as you recall, when we left off with your groups the other night, we were talking about how we were going from capacity building into our congregations. And so I just want to remind you that we named our reality with our assessment. We created a vision with our future story. And now we're going to be connecting the future story with the vision part or the future story with our reality and see how we can move people on. The thing that's great about this as we move ahead is it helps us to identify more clearly when we read that future story what our why is as a congregation. And not only does it help us understand the why of our congregation, it shows an image of what it is we hope to become. And so we're starting from our why, we're moving out to our what, and the capacity plan is how we connect the two. That's our how. And the capacity plan shows how we're going to get there and how we're going to do that thing. The thing that is interesting is there are a lot of ministry planning services out there. I reviewed just about all of them, I think, for congregations, and particularly when I was working on my book. And one of the things that has become enormously clear to me is a lot of these processes are good at getting the congregation to maybe their why, but then they stop there, or they get to a vision statement of what they want to become, and then the process stops. It doesn't do any good to do any of that without a specific plan for how you're going to get there. This is one of my favorite sayings. A vision without a plan is actually a fantasy. It's only a fantasy for a long time. And I've run across people that have a lot of great ideas and great plans, but unless you put some teeth to it, unless you put some metrics to it, you're not ever going to get to the place of achieving the vision that you hope to achieve. So we are working to inspire our congregations with this vision. We're holding this beautiful image of God's kingdom out in front of people, and we're trying to propel people to join us in that vision and in that thing. So we're trying to take the flames that are within everyone's heart and fan those so that they're inspired to move ahead and do what it is God has called us to do. We're not developing a plan to motivate people or whip them into shape or make them do something. What we are doing is trying to present an image and keep that image out there in front of people so that we can go into the next level of development. Dean shared with us last night, Thursday night with the devotions, passage from Romans 8, and it's a great reminder of what it is. We hope for what we do not see. And so if our future story or our vision that we're putting out in front of people is something we already see, that's not going to inspire people to move on to greatness. We need to keep it so that we can go on into a greater sense, a greater future direction. So let me take a quick look here. Yes. So what we do in developing a capacity plan is what I call a straw dog, or what's been called a straw dog. And I discovered that a lot of people don't know the term straw dog, but a straw dog is something that you put out to get the conversation started. It might get taken apart, it might get beat to heck, but a straw dog is an example of what we could become. And so the future story isn't what you're trying to impose on a group of people. It's just merely giving structure to something so that people have something to respond to. And so my son was a missionary in China for 5 years. And one of the things that we discovered in China is that much to many people's chagrin, they eat dogs in China. And it's considered a delicacy. And in fact, there's one particular month during the year, it's kind of like Thanksgiving, where dog is a staple part of their diet. Well, when food sources are short, they don't use those for offerings. And so they used to, in their religion, make sacrifices or offering of a dog. And so as food got short, they created straw dogs and made them out of straw as an offering. And that's what this is. The vision that you put together in your future story is an offering that you're giving to the congregation. And they might tweak it a little bit, or they might say, oh, that's just really great. But it's an offering to get a conversation started. And the capacity report is meant to propel the church towards a new way of being and how you might get there. It's always fluid, as Keith has said earlier on. It's always a fluid thing. You know, when you start a trip, you sometimes have to make adjustments along the way. So it's not a hardcore kind of plan. It's not the law of how the church is going to operate. It's a vision of what we aspire to be and how we hope to get there. So I sent, you should have all received a copy of a capacity plan. Am I right? Nod your heads or give me a thumbs up. Yeah, thank you. I don't know if you have access to your capacity plan, but what I'll try to do is share that with you. Let's see here, there it is. This was can you see the capacity plan now? Yes, okay, thank you. This was a delightful congregation I got to work with in the Seattle area, and it's a Presbyterian church. And I don't know if you had a chance to read through any of it, but they really worked hard at developing a plan for their unrealized future. Just a little bit of background, this congregation used to have a very large facility. The congregation was just averaging 60 people, and they had a sanctuary that seated about 400. So it was really lost in this large facility. Not only did they have too large of a facility, they had a mortgage that was just killing them. Their mortgage payments were something like $300,000 a year, and the congregation's total income was about $100,000 a year. So it was not a sustainable situation. And so they sold their building and received quite a wad of cash as a result of that. They built up some good equity in that facility. And they moved in with an ELCA congregation in Federal Way, Washington, called Calvary Lutheran Church. And they rented space from them, and they developed a plan around a specific why. And their why was knowing that elderly people have different needs from other kinds of groups of people within segments within the population. They wanted to be the best darn church for older people that they could possibly be. Many of their members and their congregants are in their 80s, 70s, and 80s. Some of them are in their 90s. And it's just a delightful congregation. So after going through this process, I just want to share a quick story. They discovered when they went to church on Sunday morning quite frequently, there were homeless people sleeping in the vestibule of the church building. And it used to be they would come in and they would kick the homeless people out and say, come on, you know, church is going on, you got to move on. And then they would go in and set up. Well, after going through this process, they began to see that they might have a ministry here. And so they would kick out, instead of kicking out the homeless people, they would invite them inside the church to warm up. And they would give them coffee and they'd give them donuts. And then they'd go off and do their choir practice before the rest of the church members arrived. And one day, one of the homeless people said, can we sing with your choir? And they said, sure. And they brought the guy in and he sang with the choir. Well, the next thing you know, more and more homeless people showed up on Sunday morning before church started. And it just became part of the deal. They eat a donut and drink some coffee, and then they go and sing in the choir. And I would say about half of their choir is composed of homeless people. And the other half of the choir is made up of these elderly people, some of them with walkers and some of them sitting in chairs. And they've developed community together as a result of that. So one of the things about this church was they got to focusing on their why. Their why was specifically not around homelessness, but it was around mission and ministry and helping spiritual maturity develop for senior citizens within the place that they were a part of. So they articulated their why in the first segment. They talked about specific objectives that they wanted to achieve. And then they talked about the opportunity. A lot of times when people are exposed to a new idea for the first time, they need to see what the opportunity is for that. They need to see what's going on in our culture, what's going on in our specific community that is a ministry opportunity. And they need to see it, instead of looking at it through the eyes of the institution, they need to see it through the eyes of God. And so we talk about the opportunity, and then we list the specific goals. So that first part is what I want to talk about as we move ahead in this particular time frame that we're at. Let me switch back. So you can see there's an outline for the process, an outline for capacity plan, the why, the objective that we're trying to do, the opportunities that we have, specific goals that we're trying to do. Those are the elements that we talked about at each of your stories. And then we end with a timeline, staffing implications, and budget implications. Just a quick reminder about the difference between a goal and an objective. This is something that a lot of people get confused about. And if you look at the capacity report, you can see there was some confusion by the people there that wrote their goals and their objectives as well. A goal is an agreed outcome of the project. It's broad, it's very long-term, and it outlines a big picture. Whereas an objective has specific measurable things that are available to it. It's achievable, it's realistic, it's time-bound, but there's something tangible, there's a result that you can see. So a goal might be to facilitate faith formation for people who are elderly living in our community. The objective would be to hire a director of faith formation for the congregation who would help shape and form programming around doing that. That's measurable. You can tell whether you hired the person or not. You can tell whether they're actually starting to do their work. The other thing is a little harder to define if we had actually made it. When we talk about a ministry opportunity, and we're going to be turning you loose in your small groups to talk about these things, what we're trying to do is go back to that best at part that we were looking at. We want to say, this is the opportunity that's available for us. So for example, if you wanted to, I could give you statistics for each of your communities about how many people do not participate in a faith community. You would say there's this openness in our community. You might, if your focus is on children, you might talk about your children's population. You might talk about some of the statistical data about some of the needs that they have. I know a number of you are working with after-school programs for children. What is the presenting need that makes that look like a ministry opportunity for you? It describes the condition of those you hope to serve and the tools by which you're able to make a difference in their lives. Hopefully your future story has a personal connection. One of the future stories we heard told a story from somebody else's childhood about a girl who was told to wash the turnips when they were really short on food, wash the turnips for dinner, and she used the wrong brush. That helps personalize the story. It helps grip the person when they do that. So talking about the way in which they look at life, instead of looking at the ministry opportunity as something that the church needs. You know, a lot of times I hear congregations say, we need more youth in our church. And we want more youth because it makes us feel good, instead of thinking about the fact that they're going through some very formative years of their life and they have some specific needs that we could make a difference on. So our ministry opportunity will often illustrate the trends that are occurring outside the congregation's door and how we could connect with God's mission. So we're going to send you off into team time. And Dean, are you about ready to do some breaking out? I can't see him right now, but I'm guessing, yeah, Dean, give me a thumbs up.
Yeah, we're good.
Okay, good. You're going to want to write down these questions, folks. There's a lot of them. And we're going to give you 45 minutes in this next session to break out of small groups. And I want you to talk about the elements of your story. Remember, when we ended each night, we talked about identifying what are the elements, what are the kinds of things that you're doing as a result, and specifically, what are the new things that you're doing in your future story. What are the elements of our story? What are the things that were in our story that are new things that we're going to be doing? Be able to identify those. The second question is, what does the story say about our why? What does the story say about our why? The third question we want you to discuss is, what opportunity are we trying to address with this story? When we look at this story, what are we trying to address? And does the need that we're trying to fulfill really exist in our context? Does the need really exist? The fourth area we want you to talk about is, what goals and objectives are implied by our story? And then finally, what on this list of elements that we're looking at could be a quick victory for us, something that we could do quickly? And what on this list of elements of our story is more long-term? That's quite a bit of formative work, and we think that'll take you at least 45 minutes as a conversation to get started. These might be questions that you need to address again when you get together after we get done with this process today, but we wanted you to have some significant time to begin to focus on these things. Are there any questions? If you have a question, go ahead and raise your hand or do whatever and see if we can get your attention.
Is there a way to list? Is there a way to list these questions in the? Can somebody type them into the chat so we can see them?
I'm not sure. I think once we go into group, the chat disappears. Is that right, Dean, or does anybody know?
I took a picture of them with my phone.
Yeah.
Ah.
Oh, yeah.
There you go. We can do that. Sorry about that.
Rick, before breaking into groups, I just forgot to mention that I am recording this, and we'll make it available to everyone after it uploads to the cloud. And so that email will then be forthcoming with the recording of this workshop. And that said, Rick, maybe you could provide the slides that are embedded. I mean, that might be also a corollary that they can refer to as well.
Absolutely. I'll get you a PDF of the slides.
Okay.
Everybody ready to go? All right, Dean, start your magic.
If anybody finds they're not in a breakout room, let me know. Send me a text to the Northwest Minnesota Synod, and I will get you in. Let's see. You said 45 minutes?
Yes, sir.
All right, you should be getting assigned.
Can you hear me now?
Okay, I see a caller 5270. Which group should you be in?
Can you hear?
Yes, which group are you with? How about Justin? Which group should you be
Hear
in?
me?
I should be in with Calvary Lutheran Church.
Park Rapids or Perham?
Oh, yeah, Park Rapids.
Yeah, and see, I just got put in Perham too, so I left it. Nancy McDowell.
All right. You should be coming up pretty quick here. I can reassign you. Sorry, I got you in the wrong Calvary.
That's all right, you got me in Calvary.
I don't see you to reassign. Hang on a second. Carlton, where do you belong?
It's Staples.
Staples. Thank you.
So you don't see my name or?
I can see you, but in the breakout rooms, I can't see
Oh,
you
see.
to assign you.
I was in the Perham one and I left it and came back to you guys. So do I have to go back to the Perham one to get reassigned?
Oh, yep, there you are.
Okay.
Calvary Park Rapids, right?
Yes, thank you.
All right, off you go. Take care.
Thanks. Maybe.
Maybe?
I haven't gone yet.
Ah. Says you've not joined. Do you see a pop-up option to join?
I see stop video, mute participant, chat. No, shall I leave and join? Shall I
Sure.
leave and join?
Yeah, give that a try.
Leaving meeting.
Oh, you'll have to start the Zoom meeting all over again then. Sorry, I'm still doing administrative stuff with the rest of the people. I'll be right with you. I see somebody still in the main room with a phone number that ends with 4956.
Oh, that's me. I go to Wild Rice Parish.
Gotcha.
Thank you.
Yep. Yep.
You muted Kay and she can't unmute herself.
Okay.
Can you unmute her, please?
I sure can.
Perfect, thanks.
No, I can't. I'll join your group and do it. Kathleen, which group should you be in?
I should be in the Bagley group.
Okay, I'll send you over.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
indirectly, even the neighbors will affect the people.
Hang on a second.
Yeah.
Carl, which church are you with?
Also
Faith, Staples.
Staples. All right, I'll send you there. Hang on a second.
on our objectives, goals and objectives. Yeah, like the short term. Well, a quick victory, like something, one of our goals or objectives to reach. Do we have one that would be kind of a quick victory, as they call it, like something that we could implement or start quick? That wouldn't be a big, huge project at any time. Right, with a quick victory. I don't know if any of ours would be a quick victory. Maybe the story time would be probably,
Yep.
yeah, a quick victory, I would think, because it wouldn't take a lot of, to set up, set up.
Yeah, and we've already got the volunteers for it.
Yeah, two, yeah. Were you getting this story time to be once a week? Or? You know, we could start out with that, and if it seemed like if we could talk to people and see if it would benefit them to have it twice. I mean, I'd be willing to help me to see, we could set up some kind of program, revolving, whatever. Like once a week would you, that you people would go back and forth, maybe share? I'd have to start out under her and watch her a little bit because it's been a long time. She does it once a month. She still does. It's called on community. Okay, and I'm sure after. So going off her experience, I would like to, it probably wouldn't take much at all. She is really good with kids. Putting the program very, very similar. I think is what somebody developed. And then you provide us a copy of for the moms or grandmas or whoever brings the kids.
Good. So what was the second question?
And the second was what on your list would be a quick victory or a quick thing. That was our second one. Was,
we're already there.
Yeah, we're already there. The quick victory was setting up our story time.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
About the third question.
And then we could have, I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to mention one thing. We could have people sign up to like bring cookies in or bring in treats for everybody every week at story time. You know what I mean? So that it wouldn't be one or two people that are always bringing treats because all of a sudden they're burned out, right? And it's like more. And it just did not. We had a little sign up sheet for people to do that. They, a lot of people are just have to do a little something. They're not up to doing a big something, but a little something. Right.
Yeah, and
a little something. I like it.
I've seen too where there's more people willing to bake and drop off than baking and then serving.
Yeah, exactly right.
So that might be an even bigger pool to draw from.
Yeah, absolutely right. Yep. They can drop off. Going faster. While we're talking, when I filled candles yesterday, I just filled the community candles because the candelabras, I thought we would want to burn up all this oil on candelabras in the building. Except you guys, not that you guys aren't important to see the candelabras, candles, but and I left a little note up there about moving the July 5th to the July 19th.
Okay. Oh, yeah, I need to get that up on Facebook too.
That's okay. But if you announce it on Sunday, pretty much everybody watches. And I mentioned it to people too. Jean didn't mention it too, that we moved the opening July 5th to opening July 19th. I thought I heard something. You probably heard something because when I talked to some friends, I mentioned to them, oh, by the way, we're doing this. Because our 4th of July weekend is what plans are it so? I said that's 4th of July weekend is moving during the 5th of July, that was a dumb thing for me to say. also can be just as a. That's right, where does the. We can say that, Pastor, the council president really made a big mistake.
Yeah.
Huh? Yeah, so, the next weekend then is what we're planning on, the weekend after.
Two after.
Oh, 2 weekends, so the 19th. And we're gonna have a council meeting on the 13th, I'm sorry, Jean, but and we're going to have it at the church at 7 o'clock on Wednesday, the 8th. No, yeah, Wednesday the 13th.
13th.
Sorry. That's one of the days I'm scheduled to work, so we'll see, I mean, no year. Okay. I was gonna let everybody, but anyway, because when we have that council meeting, we will set up who needs to do, well, we're having a little committee meeting before that, but the council for them to agree to the way it's going to be handled. Sure. Yeah, and if they have any, because the council has to make final decisions. Yeah. So the little committee will have a thing there for the council to approve. Mm-hmm. Okay, so if it's not approved, then we move the date again, I think. It's a work in progress, I'll say. Right.
Oh.
But there's things that we need to do, and there's, yeah. It's tough. This COVID is tough, yeah. You know, have everybody in plastic and big plastic bubbles. Yep. People can bounce around, yeah. I'm sorry, we have so many people. We should go back to what we're supposed to do.
What's the third question?
Yeah, there is a lot. That's sad. It's really sad. Okay. Okay, and then what is more long-term that we're looking at? Like we have this short objective. What's a long-term thing that we're looking at that we should probably work on? You know, what is a more long-term goal? Our opportunities, there's actually broad. There are opportunities for, could it be a playground? A playground equipment, could be a long-term goal. Yeah, we think we're in good steps tomorrow, that's for sure. Yeah. Like maybe start looking into doing a fundraiser for that. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there is some, I looked over, when we go into our dedicated fund, we do have money and things that are not being really done anymore. You know what I mean? I think, we have, well, that's a sound system memorial, but there's some things that are kind of closed, but there's still money in there, and that could probably go towards a playground system for the kids. And that would be nice. Probably help cover the insurance as the cost of it. Yeah, I mentioned it to people a couple of times, and they just kind of said, I'm going to this was a while ago. Yeah, yeah. So I'm glad somebody is realizing that, I've done up there, that even while I'm being on there, I should probably, we have to have something that's considered safe and, it doesn't have to be big. You know, have some swings and a couple slides and, it doesn't have to be huge.
No.
Yeah, just something that will feel. You have to have some space there, but that much when we do that, the parking lot.
I've checked with our insurance before, and they said we'd be covered and sent a short page of recommendations for how to do it well. So.
Good. That's great. That's great.
Yeah, I asked if there was any requirements to be covered, and they. What's that?
Somebody mentioned at our meeting that we just had Wednesday night that their insurance company asked them to fence it in.
Yeah, and that's listed on the recommendations, but it's really carefully written as recommendations. So I asked if there's any requirements to be covered, and they said no, there aren't any. But here are some good guidelines to work from. So there was no requirement for fencing.
Okay. But their insurance company had asked them to do it, so I suppose.
Right.
For them and their insurance company would.
Yep.
Yeah. There's different insurance companies and different ideas. But that could be a long-term goal.
Yep.
What else? We'd like to get more music in the church, like more outside music, like it was nice having Jacob, his boys niece when, I don't know, will you play again this? Yeah, she still doesn't want to. We're so fun to hear Jacob. Yeah, Davey can play a couple of songs for you. Yeah. And Rusty. Still have Rusty we can use, which is real nice. Yeah. I mean, if we work on getting maybe a guest musician every week, just to break out the circuit. To get one. See, some of these things we have to pass over to the worship committee. This special music would be worship committee.
Yep.
They're, Yep. Their committee is that we can. Know about it. Right? And realizing that they know about it as far as approving and not approving people coming. I figure if they want to.
Oh, yeah, it's not so much the approval as who's lining people up.
Yeah. And sometimes I think I have a tendency to do this, to forget that we have these committees and we're not using them. And I think that's why they become silent.
Mm-hmm.
Because we don't look and listen. We say, hey, okay, this is, the council will say, well, who's going to do this? And somebody on the council will raise their hand, which is really nice. Very nice of them to offer to do this. But we have a committee that people have volunteered to do this. And that's cutting them off, I think, so that they don't have a chance to.
Yeah, that's a good point.
You know, and that's wrong, but yeah. But I put worship committee by more music. I think also, you know, I did my little rules here to contact the worship committee and have them. Another thing, I don't know if it's considered long term or short term. I know we talked about in council, and I volunteered to help with the director, but it's been kind of hard to do this thing because it is. It'd be nice to, with our church director, talk more about the church and all the different programs and have it, you know, to have a, or to have some kind of things that we can hand out to people. Yeah, anything like that? Not really. We always keep the monthly mailing, you know, we keep that up there. That if we let somebody come to hand it to them. Of course, then I was trying to get our choir director's husband to take one. I said, here, you sitting in our church in the choir singing because her husband drives it, I think, to a lot of people. Because I had never met this gentleman or anything before. And he was like, what do I want to be doing? Not the choir director, I'm married to Sarah on the piano.
Oh.
Sarah's husband. Oh, okay. Well, that's okay. Nice gentleman. Yeah, but the directory, voter directory. And I don't think if we got like people, if people want that didn't get their pictures taken, provide their own picture. That way they get to, because they can do that. We don't have we're gonna have that 5 to 10 directory for 5 to 10 years. Then they get to pick the shot. The mug shot per se that gets cut in there of their family or whatever. That can be something fun. There's something else that somebody mentioned, people have mentioned to me a couple of times now, just lately. And that is, if we could bring back our potluck dinner. I know our church is from 9 to 10. And so that the potluck dinner is kind of fizzled when that happened because people didn't want to eat dinner at 10 o'clock. Also, people have mentioned to me we could have a little later service, not at 9 o'clock, but not at 11, and not at, you know, it could even just be 9:30, you know, 9:30 service instead of 9 o'clock. And it's to get their children ready on Sunday because for some it can get to be a real hassle to get ready, drive into town, get here by 9 o'clock. And that's understandable. Yeah. But that's a congregation decision. And I know people putting up a family. Yeah, and also whether, I mean, Pastor Dean has a lot of irons in the fire too, I don't know. Yes, he does too, so we have to try to, yeah. To do a long lake in the summer, I'm assuming, are you not doing that?
Right. so far.
But we would continue it once COVID is over, right? Probably.
I would hope so, yeah.
Or, yeah.
Um,
But I think we could have a dinner, let's just call it brunch. Maybe we should make it a brunch and then people get a brunch. Instead of a potluck dinner, it's a potluck brunch. Yep. Because when we were assigning people, we bring for a breakfast or a brunch, that's it. And I don't blame them. I was a little upset too.
So the people that are asking are also people that would be willing to take on preparing and serving regularly?
I'm sure they would. Mary Hanson's one of them. She always enjoyed that. And we also have to realize some of the people aren't going to be able to bring, and that's fine. That's the one thing that we really have to be sure that people understand. If you don't bring anything, you still come. Because there's always more food. We're not going to run out of food. But please come. Just come. You know, yeah. And like we would be serving coffee that day, we could have like a free will offering, but we don't even have to have that.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, and a lot of these
For coffee, but
objectives that we lay out to reach the goals, there's certainly things that we can try, and if they work, then we keep doing them, and if they don't work, then it was good for a time, or it doesn't have to be seen as a failure, and we can try other things too. So
the biggest thing is not to set so many goals where we think people over and over again and money down. We may have to be realistic, objectives, size goals, whatever, so that we have smiling people that are having people come, for people that are have to be presented kind of things. We gotta kind of, because we have a smaller pool now of volunteers. Well, that's true. We're losing people by things that we don't want to really talk about, how we're losing them. But, yeah, and if it's not luck, people don't stand for free. As long as they understand, they come anyway. They always come and take part. And even if they are late for services, they can sit down in there and wait. They can come in the kitchen and put out plates or something like that, or they can just sit down there and wait for us to be done and join us in brunch.
So we've got 7 minutes left.
What's the next question? Okay. We could even invite the community for potluck lunch once in a while, if we get it going. Just to put out a thing, hey, we're having a potluck lunch at our church, and we could set it for like 10:30, so people have time to, after service, just to get, if they're not lined up yet, to get them lined up. Or, 10:30, quarter to 11, yeah. That would be one way of reaching out to the community.
Yep.
Oops, I'm taking up time. 7 minutes. Oh, the next question. That was the next question. What is more long-term goals? That was I know, but we have 5. So that's why I said, what was the next question? 5? I only had 3.
Oh.
Four different parts to it.
Yeah, there was 2 more questions. There was a total of 5. I thought I got them all by taking a picture, but the picture didn't take.
Wait a minute. Whoops. Mine was what are more long-term goals, because we answered our short-term goal, possibly what we can do, and our first one was, okay, goals and objectives.
Let me see if Keith got them. Keith.
Story-wise, whatever. Yeah, sorry about that. I thought
Did you happen to catch the 4th and 5th questions?
Not the first page. Mine was the last page.
Where's the picture? The picture didn't take.
Stories. Why didn't have a story? Where are we trying to? Are we trying to this? That was one of those. What goals and objectives apply? We have a need to do this. I just took the last questions that were on that last page. Sorry. you're okay. That's the wrong one. They were on blocks or something.
Yeah, it's 5 minutes left.
Well, I started with
Yeah.
why, the first one there was the story, why, you know, what are we trying?
Yep, so not sure what the last two questions are, but we've had a real good discussion. So we've got, for our goals, I'm hearing reaching young people, connecting to the community, providing opportunities to the community for fellowship, making Christ known, and then I don't have words around our inside our faith family, so inside the church. We've named things like special music, a directory, a brunch, and moving the worship time. So what would goal be for those objectives? Yeah.
Yeah. Isn't that what our long-term goal?
Yeah, for the community, it's just to make church funner, I guess, I don't know. It's always a little funner when I do it. Yeah. Any input there?
Playground equipment bringing children into at least around the building so that they're familiar with the building. Nobody's gonna jump out and get them. They're being there because we've got the equipment. I think we're inviting children to use something that's by our building, you know. I think our goal for a brunch is for our congregation to visit with that, but also if we have a community brunch, inviting the community, getting more people into
Yep.
the building. You know, it's in the fellowship hall, they can go up and see what the main church looks like. They've already put music, you said it to make church more fun. So, but music is a nice addition to our church for people to enjoy. A lot of people enjoy music.
Okay, so a goal could be what then? Enjoying our I think how to say this in enjoyment in our faith community.
Yeah, that's really good.
Enjoyment and involvement, yeah, by our community. More involvement maybe because of the chance to invite more, I don't know. I don't find your sermon boring. I don't know. Yeah, so it's not that, but a young family coming in, maybe get some fun kids music in there somewhere.
Oh, we got about a minute and a half left. The one other goal that I heard in our story was faith formation. And how did, so Julie brought this up, making Christ known in our own lives, I think was how she put it. So we named a Bible study and worship in the faith formation. So we've got a lot of good goals and objectives towards meeting those too.
And I think another thing you should think about is having a little packet, a little something that it's not necessarily the monthly mailing, but a little something that we could have made up. If somebody comes in new in our church, instead of a monthly mailing, it could be both of them, but one could be a little bit more about all of our programs.
A guest packet, yeah.
Yeah, make up a little, not a lot, but just a little guest packet. And thank you for coming and please, know what we have, know the opportunities we have.
We do follow up with, when we have guests that sign in on the clipboards, we do follow up with a letter that says thank you for joining us, and you're certainly welcome to be with us as often as you would like. And if you've got if you already have a faith family, we encourage you to continue there, but you're welcome to join us in whatever capacity, and may God bless you.
Yeah, and that's very nice for them to get that formal letter.
But something up front would be good too.
Something, a little something just to hand them up front, I think, you know,
Something like a little, it's a little booklet. Maybe made up instructions or something.
well, we have them out for like we have a lunch, we have a, you know, yeah. We have a playground outside, we have wings, just a little something.
Well, down the road, I think we should have like a little schedule.
That's right, yeah.
Something with our, with
Okay, put it back up in the.
oh yeah, you just took my spot.
Well, good to see everybody back. I like this part when the groups return. Everybody comes back at one time. When we do a workshop, everybody trickles back in at a slower pace. So this works out really good. How you doing, John? Are you hanging in there? I'm sure he said something smart, but we'll go from there. Let's try to see if we can have a discussion for just a moment. And if you'd like to speak, if you go to your reactions, you'll see that there is a hand clap or a thumb up. If you would give me a hand clap or a thumb up, if you would like to say something, then we will call on you to do that. So my first question is, of all these questions that we just discussed, which did you find the most difficult in fact, why don't we put this in the chat? Okay, put this in your chat feature. What question did you find was the most difficult for your team to try to get some centering around? And you can say 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5, because there were 5 of them. Just type it in, and if there was none, put a 0. If they were all easy to talk about, then put a 0 in.
Rick, could you show those, that's great thing to have a chat feature, but could you post that, those 5 questions? They can have it displayed before them as they respond.
Yes, good idea. Okay, now I gotta get the chat going here. Ah, good. I got a couple 0s and a 1. What are the elements of our story? Understanding what those are. 2, because we couldn't exactly remember why terminology. Okay. That's helpful. Any other comments anybody want to add? I'm glad to see the 0s on there. I'm glad to hear that the conversation went and moved along. So hopefully, yeah, the goals and objectives need to be worked out. Number 2, what does the story say about our why? Good. I remember your story, Kevin, so that's good. So hopefully this will give you some help in developing some structure. We didn't expect you were going to get all the answers to these questions together as a group right now, but at least you've got your thought process going. And with the sample that you have from Steel Lake Presbyterian Church, hopefully between those two things, when you get done with today, you're going to be able to go back and create these documents in a way that are meaningful and helpful. And remember, if you ever get stuck with this stuff, you have these very skilled coaches that you can deal with and that you can call on at any time. And they'll be happy to talk with you and share with you about what's going on. So let me kind of get a look at the room here real quickly. Do you feel like we can move on, or do we need to take a break? I don't know how it took during the time you were having your small group discussion. If you need a break, would you put a thumbs up on the thing, and we'll see if that's. I got a 5 from somebody. Tell you what, if there's a couple of little breaks there, let's take a 3-minute break. Since you're all home, you know where you're going and stuff. I'm gonna take a 3-minute break, and we'll be back. Make sure you keep your phone on mute, and we will come right back in 3 to 5 minutes. Okay, good, thank you. And if you have any questions or thoughts, let's use the chat line. Let's keep that going. looks like we're coming back. I notice there's a few people still missing. But I'm glad to see you come back. I hope you enjoy that long break. You all have a good time. Guess what? We're doing real good on time. And I'm going to make sure that you all get out at a reasonable time so that you can eat your lunch, because I know you might get hungry. I apologize if my screen goes black at some point. We're having a pretty big thunderstorm here right now, and I might disappear at some moment. And if I do, just hang in there. I'll be back as soon as I can. The next thing we're going to talk about is, and I know that there's some desire to hear a little bit more about how we sell this to our congregation. There's one more element that I want to cover, though, before we get into talking about how to present this to our congregation. So, as you recall, you developed elements in your future story. So an element might be like putting a playground in the backyard of the church, or an element might be expanding the community garden that we have and utilizing different land. That would be considered an element. And so with each element, there are 4 capacities that you need to develop in order to make this a reality. And this is what nonprofit organizations frequently do, is they build capacity to meet the goals that they set for themselves. The first goal has to do with adaptive things. The adaptive part kind of goes along with what Bishop Bill was talking about this morning. Remember, if we are going to become something new, we probably have to let go of something. You can't just keep grabbing and grabbing and grabbing and taking on more and more things. It means that we're going to have to develop the ability to let go if we're going to create whatever's new. So, for example, if you're going to make more land in front of your church building into a community garden, you might have to let go of a flower bed, or let go of the aesthetic that you've always thought of for that part of the church property in order to serve the community better. You might have to let go of the fact that you're thinking of your church as this country church that has this beautiful yard in front of it, in order to convert it into something that is meaningful like that. The other part is, the second thing that you need to work on would be, what kind of technical skills do we need to develop if we're going to be effective with this ministry? So, for example, I was working with a church in Texas one time that was trying to develop a coffee house ministry. When we got to talking to the people in the leadership group, we discovered that nobody knew how to make coffee. So that would be a technical skill that you might want to develop if you're going to move ahead on creating a coffee house ministry. It seems like sort of an essential thing. So once you identify the technical skills that you need to develop, then you can list, how can we develop those technical skills so that we can do this better or more effectively? What resources are available to help us learn the skills that we need so that we're doing an exceptional job of this ministry? I know a lot of your churches are thinking about some sort of mission or ministry with children's groups, after school programs, things like that. You know, what kind of technical skills can you employ in that that's going to help you? Again, if we go back to the adaptive, if you're doing after school children's programming, what part of the building are you going to do that? What do we have to let go of in terms of that use of space? There was one church I worked with years ago that had one room that was just dedicated to women's ministry. And their women's group only met once a month, and the church kept this room empty the whole rest of the time when they had needs for children's programming and stuff like that. So sometimes you have to think about, what are we going to let go of in order to do this? And maybe what's the theology behind letting go? Why would God want us to do this? The third area deals with leadership. And when we deal with leadership, Keith and I were having a conversation about the role of pastors and things like that while you were all working on your small groups. And one of the things about it is, more and more congregations say, that's a great idea. Pastor, you need to do this. And we just keep dumping things more and more on the pastor. And pretty soon it becomes like the police department. You know, they're a social worker, they're doing all these kinds of different things and not really being able to focus on the main task. So how do we develop leadership within our congregation that's more than just the pastor doing it? How do we develop leadership within the congregation that has the resources they need in order to do it? I've talked about this before, but I think it's unconscionable to sometimes that we as churches just send people in to do youth work or send people in to do work with children without giving them the resources or preparing them or helping to teach them to learn how to be effective leaders in those particular spots. So how can we develop the leadership that we need for this particular element? And then finally, the last part is the easy part. How do we get the resources we need to do this? Whenever you present a new idea to a group of people, they're going to want to know, how do you pay for it? Where's it going to be? All those kinds of detail things. And actually, that's the easiest part. If it's a good idea, the money will come. You'll figure out a way to do it. If it's a good idea, it doesn't need to hold you back. But you might give some thought to it as you present your capacity report. So we're going to break into groups again. And these 4 capacities are going to be something that you address as a team. I would like to invite you to take one element from your future story, just one element, and go through these steps and have a conversation. What would we have to let go of? What kind of adaptive skills do we need to do in order to make this happen? Technical skills that we need to learn to develop in order to do that. What would it require for leadership for us to do this particular element? And finally, what resources do we need to make this come together? And just do a quick thing about that. So, does that make sense? Dean, are you ready to put us into groups? Yes, I see a thumbs up there. So let's put into groups and we'll have 15 minutes for this conversation.
Oh, hello. I think I'm in the wrong group.
Would you remind me again, Mike? Where you
Sure.
go?
I'm Calvary Perham.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dean, for. Did you miss me, Keith? Oh. All right, it looks like we're all back. I hope that that gave you an idea of how easy it is going to be to put a plan together once you have identified the 4 areas. I think somebody needs to be muted, that we're getting some feedback. So please check to make sure you're all muted. I'd like to just finish up today, and I hope you wouldn't mind if I let you go a little early. I'd like to finish up today talking about how do we get buy-in from the congregation. It's one thing to have a great idea, but if you're the only person that thinks it's a great idea, then you're going to be doing it all by yourself. So I don't think anybody wants to act that way. And so there's some really tried and true methods. The organization I work for, we do a lot of capital fundraising and things like that. And we've learned over the years that you've got to be careful about how you bring new initiatives into a congregation's life in order to encourage them to move in a good direction and move all together. And what we discovered is that it's not really that hard. It just involves some skills on our part as leaders in order to help move a congregation into a new direction. So the first thing is, like I might have mentioned in your group, we talked about it several times, Keith and I did, about how churches are designed to say no. Congregations will generally resist change. The 7 last words of the church are, "We've never done it that way before." And we know that people really get torqued about all kinds of different things. I think I told you the story about one of the first churches that I served. They had an initiative to move the worship service just 15 minutes earlier. And it was primarily so we could get to brunch and beat the Baptists. And people would have thought it was the end of World War II or something like that, the way everybody went after each other over such a simple thing. And yet you can make major changes in a congregation and nobody will say a word. I've seen churches that have changed their constitutions or voted to remove pews or something like that, and people just go right for it. But it's important to note that our structures wire our churches to say no, and generally the reason is people want things to be predictable. We like to kind of have normalcy in our lives. And right now, I think it's going to be even harder in some ways to make a lot of changes because our lives have been completely uprooted. But in some ways, that's going to make it easier to make changes in our lives because we've already been surviving a lot of uprootedness, and we're going to be able to do that more readily as we get into the future. We discovered that we could make some big changes in our lives, and nobody got in bad shape as a result of that. It's important to remember when we played that game, the game Yes and No, that our amygdalas are wired as a no-fault decision to say no right off the bat. And one of the things I've learned about churches over the years is that no doesn't mean never. It just means maybe not now. And so we don't have to give up ideas or thoughts or anything like that just because we're getting some negative feedback at one time. The devil that you know is better than the devil you don't know. At least that's what our brain seems to think. You know, if we know that what we're doing maybe doesn't have really great results, but at least we know what we're doing, and the deacons know where they're supposed to go, and the people that have responsibilities know what they're doing. And so the final thing is that the shift from no to yes means having an open heart and the courage and the willingness to move into a new sense of reality. The other part is that we learn is that congregations can move into new realities if they can see a quick victory at the beginning. And so what we're trying to do with our congregations is to build some excitement in ownership in the process. So you've done all this work. The biggest disaster would be if you just showed up at a congregational meeting and flopped this big, beautiful plan on everybody's lap and said, okay, let's vote on it now. That'd be the worst thing in the world you could do. What you're gonna have to do is finesse it into the works and into the conversation of everybody's heart and mind. So you begin by building excitement and ownership in what is the new vision or the future story of the congregation. Early on, we do what's called a 21-day challenge, which is after we receive it as a church, we take the easiest element that you have already identified as what would be the easiest element, and we give ourselves 21 days to do that. We just say, we're going to do this in 21 days. So people can see right off the bat, we've achieved something from the future story already, and we're moving ahead as a congregation. And then we have what's called the Pentecost Project, which is, and you can call it whatever you want to, but we call it the Pentecost Project, which is a term for a longer term project, something that's going to take more than maybe even a year to do, but something that we can get up for. So here's some tips. You want to get the word out more than once. And once you start introducing the future story, you might want to present it to small groups that are already established within the life of the church. Maybe there's a women's ministry group. Ask if you can get on the agenda and bring the future story and share it with a small group of people. And then listen to them, you know, say after they heard the story, what was engaging about this story to you? What kind of insights do you have? Is this the kind of church that you would like to see in the future? Maybe you can think of some ways to strengthen the story. But give it to another group and just say, and listen to their reaction. It doesn't mean being defensive of the action, but it means listening to them. And then the third thing is to be enthusiastic about it. Boy, I went to church one time where this guy was introducing a potluck dinner after church. And he was so bored out of his head talking about it. You know, the whole congregation was falling asleep listening to this guy, you know, and he was going, well, I guess we're going to have a potluck dinner. If you feel like coming, that would be good. You know, that isn't going to do it for anybody. You need to be a little enthusiastic. You have to have a pulse about this. You got to say, God, you know, we've spent this time praying and listening to the voice of God, and we finally feel like we've got some real direction here about what God is calling us to do. And man, we hope this is something that you can get excited about as well. We invite you to be part of that. The fourth area is to be clear about the why, about why you're doing it. You know, we talked about children's programs and children's ministry. We're not doing this so we feel better about ourselves. You know, every church wants to have a lot of little kids running around the building. That's great, but this is not the reason we're doing this. The reason we're doing this is that they're at a very formative stage in their life. And this is an opportunity that we have to do something that would help them shape their form and shape and form their faith and their understanding of who God is, because we've been so blessed by all of that as well. So the thing that I can say about being clear about the why is being clear for yourself about why we're doing this. If you look at the Steel Lake story, again, you'll see that their why is because they realize that older people have different kinds of needs. People that just are entering into retirement have some needs, and that they have a chance to deepen their faith if you can facilitate that, instead of assuming that all older people have their faith already formed. The sixth area is to show competence, you know, by having the elements of your future story and by building the capacities on those, you've shown some competence. There's nothing worse than going to a meeting with people to share a future story and not being able to talk to them about how you're going to pay for it or how you think you're going to be able to make something happen. If you can answer those things, then you can get a long ways. And the other thing is when you meet resistance to ideas, new ideas, it's important to realize that that what you're hearing from people is fear. You're not hearing from them absolute no. You're not hearing from them that we don't want to go this way. What you're hearing from them is we're afraid of what this will do to us if we do this. And so if you can keep those comments and reflect upon those as fears rather than thinking about that as resistance, then you can begin to get a long ways with individuals. I remember one time I was working with a church, and one of the things that they wanted to do in their future story was get rid of this huge granite stone pulpit that they had right in the middle of their chancel. This thing had been there since the 1930s. They developed this the sanctuary's plan and put this massive pulpit in right in the middle of the sanctuary in the chancel area. And you couldn't do anything else there but preach. You know, if they wanted to have a concert or have an orchestra in or something like that, you couldn't see them because they'd be behind this big stone pulpit and things like that. And so in their future story, they got rid of the stone pulpit, and this one guy just went crazy and really went off on me. And I just finally was able to diffuse the situation by saying, what are you afraid of if we get rid of it? What is the worst thing that would happen if we get rid of that? And it gave the guy an opportunity to express his fears about what he thought. And people were able to assure him that it probably wouldn't go that way for them. You probably all have some tips. If we were in the same room together, I would say, please put those in. Maybe if you want to add tips to the chat box, that would be great. If you have some ideas about how to get a congregation more engaged in some of this stuff. The final document that you need to create after you do your capacity report, the capacity report is an internal document. It's what you use with your board. It's what you use maybe with some key leaders. Oh, and that was another idea I wanted to talk about too. Well, I'll talk about that in a few moments. But the main thing is the capacity report is an internal document for key leaders within the life of the congregation. A second report that you need is a report to the congregation. And the report to the congregation is generally something that's a little prettier. You put some pictures in it, put pictures of people from your church in it, not stock photos of models on Google, but pictures of your people smiling and having fun together and things like that. And in that, you put a small report to the congregation. Number one, what is it we learned about our church and its current condition? So through the assessment process that you did, what is it that you learned from that? It doesn't have to be more than a couple paragraphs. The second part of the story is what we discovered about our community. That would be the demographics, the things that you know about your community, things that you've learned about that. What do we know about God's mission and our particular purpose? That's your why. You can take that out of your capacity document and put that in. Then your future story goes in it. And then how might we get there? And that's just excerpts, not all the details from the capacity report, but just some general bullet points of how you might get there. And then you will want to use the appropriate process to get your congregation to receive the report. Again, this is really important. We're not asking the congregation to adopt the report. We're asking them to receive the report. That means it's not binding. It means that they are receiving all the hard work that you have done as future teams for your congregation. And it gets it into the formal approval process. If you were going to spend any money or reallocate land or anything like that, receiving the report doesn't do that. You have to come back to the congregation to get those things adopted later on. So here's some other ideas that we've learned over the years. There are some people that are leaders in the church that are elected, and there are some other people in the church that are leaders in the church that aren't elected, but everybody looks to them to see what they're going to do. And you know who I'm talking about, the informal leaders within the life of the congregation. If your church averages less than 60 people in worship on Sunday, there probably is a family that has quite a bit of influence on the structure of the church and the things that the church is going to do. You don't have to wait till a formal meeting to show somebody the future story of the church and show it to them, particularly even if it's in draft form. There was a church in California that I worked with a long time ago, where there was one lady who had been a part of the church. She was in her 80s for a very long time, and the church would never even think about doing something that she was opposed to. And so the pastor knew this, and they wanted to open up the church building for ministry and mission with the homeless people that were in the area. And they had really done some research on this. They were really ready to go, and they were pretty excited about it. But she was resistant to this. And so I suggested that the pastor go and meet with her privately, and that the pastor bring a copy of the capacity report that they'd developed to do it. Unfortunately for her, this pastor was a prolific writer, and he couldn't write anything very quickly. It was always very long. So he had an 80-page capacity report for this congregation, this small church, and he delivered it to her, and he said, you know, this is something that we're praying about and that we're working on. We'd really like for you to read this, and I'll come back next week and get your input on it. Well, at the end of the week, she had not read the report, but she could tell by the volume of it that it was well thought out, and she gave her blessing on the capacity report for that church, and it went smoothly through the congregational approval process. But sharing with small groups, sharing with key leaders, informal leaders of the church beforehand, asking people for input along the way, build the momentum for it, so that when you do get to the congregational vote, this isn't the first time people in the congregation have heard of it. This is something that they're well immersed in, and that they've had a chance to deal with and respond to. And then finally, circulate the report among the congregation in a lot of different ways, and seeking the vote to receive the report. And I'm sure that some of you can maybe think of some other things. Let's add some things on chat right now. Let's just have a quick discussion. Are there other ideas? You know, I have to admit, I've not worked with a lot of Lutherans, and there might be some things in your polity that I'm not acquainted with that might make this a better process for how we might do it. Does anybody have some ideas that you can share about how to encourage a congregation to adopt or to receive something like this? And if you want to, you can say, I don't have any ideas.
I couldn't get my chat to work, but I have two things if I'd like to share.
Good.
Number one, I couldn't go through the whole report of the congregation, so if I could see that screen again, I would take a picture. And I'm also not clear about the capacity report. I feel like we've just jumped 50 steps ahead in this last section that I don't feel we worked up to it. So I'm not totally clear, first of all, about the capacity report, and I need more time on that report to the congregation.
Okay. Is this the screen that you were wanting to see again? Yeah, this would be a good one. And I am going to provide a copy of this PowerPoint that you'll be able to have after we get done here. Keith will get that distributed to you. So remember, there's two reports. One is the capacity report, which is an internal report. That's your preliminary report that you do. And then what you're working to at the end of it is this report to the congregation. So
what would you say the capacity report has in it compared to the final report?
Yeah, the capacity report is the sample that was sent to you beforehand. This is the template here, but basically if you look at the outline that is given on the COA report, that will show you the things that you're naming in that report. You might want to take a picture of this one too. The primary thing though is that if I was working right now on one of your teams, I know that this is the summertime and that you've got some periods where things are kind of down and people take vacations and things like that. I would work to get my capacity report done by the middle of September. So the next some clarity about our future story and everything like that. And I would begin to start talking to some key people in some small groups about the capacity report itself. And then I would want to get the report received by the congregation probably in October, maybe November, and be able to look at that. In fact, I think maybe November might be a better time because a lot of congregations automatically have annual meetings in the month of November where they approve their budgets and officers for the next coming year. Does that make sense?
If I might just add to what you shared, Rick, is that there is a sense of putting the pieces together, the different legs of the journey up to this point. And there will be coming within a couple of days to all of you that you can look at individually, but also when you choose to get together as a team, you will have the PowerPoint slides themselves, as well as the recording. And it might be an opportunity somewhere down the road here, by way of this next leg in the journey, is to review where you've been, that gets you to a place that makes sense, that helps you. There was another slide that Rick provided that you'll get in the PowerPoint attachment that kind of laid it out pretty straightforward in terms of your own teams, if you will, action planning related to your story, living into your future story, in addition to the other story, your offering to be received by your congregation. And I would just add that in receiving your report, that is what you bring forward and offer, it connects to the very beginning when the congregation entered into a covenant in this journey, and you've done the work, and they made an investment, and now you're saying, here, hopefully it's received as a gift, hopefully it's received in a way that gets traction, and we're going to trust the Holy Spirit is stirring and work, and as you're paying attention to your context, how it's best to engage people. And your coaching relationships are going to become very, very important. So they're important all along the way, but especially in this last leg of the journey. Remember, we started in January. So if my sense of the calendar, we're talking December, January represents a full year.
So is my microphone working okay, Keith? Okay. I keep getting messages that my speaker is not working appropriately, but hopefully the technology will last here for just a few minutes and we can close our time. So this is the action that we need to do over the next few months. We want to get our capacity report together, circulate that around with some key leaders in the congregation, get some input from them, try to strengthen that report, work with your coach. All of that stuff by mid-September would be a good date for you to set for yourself. We get together again in October. So if you're lost or completely wiped out in some way, we'll be able to help you in October when we get together again. Anybody remember the dates? I don't have the dates on the top of my head, but we'll get those out to you. And then be ready to go with the report for the congregation in November. You've got time to get to that, and that would get you there. Once you get the report received by the congregation, then you're going to need to identify what's going to be your 21-day challenge, what's your initial project that you're going to work on, and then what is going to be your longer-term project. So October 10th is the date that we get together next. And I'm hopeful that maybe things will be calmed down a little bit so that I can actually come back and see you guys in person. I've been wanting to do some hiking there and I haven't been able to do any of it. I got gypped.
Rick, I trust that we'll see where things go as the summer unfolds, and we'll be giving thought to a space and place that could provide for distancing and breakout capabilities for the teams, that we'll be mindful of what are the protocols are. But we're also, as a planning team in this journey we've been doing, are going to give some thought to follow up to October 10th, that we may provide another opportunity or may want to provide another opportunity. And we're going to engage the team leaders, all the team leaders, in some conversation, I think, about that, about what we think might be helpful following the 10th. The bottom line is I'm hoping we'll be able to come together, if at least to be in the room together to celebrate, to have a party, to thank God and be maybe energized in whatever the journey looks like for the individual congregations that have been a part of this process.
We had some good ideas from people in the chat room. Linda suggested that we think about cottage meetings. Sometimes churches will do that, where they organize their congregation into small groups, and they look at it in small groups in people's homes. And I understand that chocolate chip cookies really work well at enticing people to come to events like that, but putting them in a home and in smaller groups, people will talk more freely and give you some good feedback on that. Dean also suggests talk with the pollinators of the congregation. That's a great term, pollinators. They're the ones that build the enthusiasm for stuff. So identify who pollinators are in your congregation and talk with them prior to the meeting. And Dean also reminded me that annual meetings are often January through February there. Man, that's the cold time. But you know, whatever works out in your congregation's polity. Mark suggested reading Faith in Bagley is, they're reading my book from our doorsteps. They're having good discussion questions at the end of each chapter. Key leaders spend about 15 minutes a month working through the book as we prepare to share our report to the congregation in November. They will tweak it November, January, sharing it with the congregation in preparation of approval of the plan at our February annual meeting. Again, the book primes the pump. Well, thank you for that. I like that.
Rick, would we get a portion of your royalties from this? That's what I want to know.
You want to know how much I make off that book? It's not that much. So yeah, I think every time somebody buys a book, I get 50 cents, something like that. So yeah, buy a bunch. Buy one for every member of the congregation. So I incidentally, the other day, I was asking my brother, I was talking to him, and my brother isn't always very lucid. He has dementia. But I was asking him, I said, did you read my last book? Because I wrote him a book on our family history and some stuff like that. And I said, did you read my last book? And he said, I hope so. So anyhow, any words? We're going to close our time together now. And I would like to just see if anybody has a word that you would like to type in on the chat. A word for where you think you are, how you feel. I know for a lot of you, this must be overwhelming because it looks like, oh my God, we got a lot more work to do. This is really kind of fun. It's you've got the hard part done. Once you got the future story done, you've got the hard part done. The rest of this, I think, will come together easier. Some people are saying encouraging, excited. That's good to hear. Anybody else have a comment?
Can I can't get my chat to work.
Good to see you.
Is it possible, Dean, that we could go back to our groups when we're done and have a little more time since we're not up to 12?
Oh,
sure.
I mean, people don't have to, but I just would like, if it's possible, to stay connected. People who don't want to don't have to.
Go into groups and do a little reconnoiter. That's a great idea.
That's a great idea. We can surely, right, Dean? Dean, with that.
Can't see Dean.
Yeah, we can do that.
Okay, great. And we'll do our after meeting later, I guess. If that's what you'd like, Keith.
Sure.
Somebody says enthused, inspired, encouraged. Those are all great words.
You're recording this, correct?
Yes,
Yeah.
it is being recorded.
Will that be available someplace so we can reference it?
Yeah, let me go ahead and let you know that you will get an email, all of you, as you got an email to how to join this meeting. You will get the recording. You'll have a link to the recording that will have edited out the breakout times and such. So you'll have that version of the recording. You'll also receive PowerPoint slides in a PDF format that were embedded in the video that you'll get, that you can make reference to or utilize in some different ways. And Rick, I'd also ask if you can make that those PowerPoint, the few PowerPoint slides related to the small interaction, the smaller workshop interactions leading up to this one that I can include with that as well. And then I wanted to let you know too that our Synod just received from a request of our research and evaluation for each county in our Synod, 21 counties, we got a impact statement. It's called a COVID-19 impact statement. It really doesn't say anything about incidents or occurrences of the virus or contagion, you know, who's contracted it and where hospitalization is for the county. So even though it's called a COVID-19 impact, it does list, it gives you a thumbprint of the demographics for your county, which includes some information about the vulnerable segments of your community. And if you like, I think I'll just include the 21 counties of our Synod, and that may inform what you've already looked at demographically, but I thought you might be interested in that as well.
Great. Well, thank you all for spending your Saturday morning with me. It was good to see you all. I feel like we're old friends now. I don't know if I'm what to do if I'm gonna see you ever three-dimensionally again. It'll be kind of fun. I hope you had a good morning, and I think what we'll do is we'll give you another 30 minutes to chat. And Keith, if you want to get us back together and 30 minutes for our follow-up as coaches, that would be great too. And we look forward to seeing you again sometime. And let's see. Yeah, go ahead. Who's doing our closing?
I'm blessed to do that. I'm going to share a prayer that is from Pastor Ted Schroeder, and this is our prayer. Lord, we come into your presence seeking a gracious blessing, but we dare ask for an outrageous portion of your grace. We ask that you not simply equip us, but that you chase us out into your world. Make us people of vision who look not in, but out, not backward, but forward, not down, but up, not at what cannot be done, but what might be accomplished by your Spirit. Make us those who seek narrow paths instead of wide and easy ways, sending us new places instead of resting places, starts instead of finishes, horizons instead of waysides, tomorrows instead of yesterdays. Give us running shoes instead of slippers, alarm clocks instead of sleep switches, accelerators instead of brakes, sailboats instead of sandcastles. Make us startle even ourselves with the power that you give, for all that you do is moved by your breath, enveloped by your Spirit, filled with the wind of your grace, and resounding to your glory and not ours. We pray in Jesus' name, amen. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord look his face upon you and give you peace. Amen. God bless.